to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Very well.
Are you doing well in the midst of all this lot? That means you are one out of many.
Well, I hear you congratulate people for holding the line, and I think I join you in sharing that that concern. It could get better.
It could get better.
Yes.
So indeed, we are very resilient people, you know.
Absolutely.
Do you see that? How would you measure the elasticity of that resilience? I hope you understand, Prof, you understand what I'm saying. You're a professor of
I know.
so
I have used that elasticity
okay.
in my last interview at Arise, where I was talking about 100 million Francophone citizens that surround Nigeria that are importing food from Nigeria, especially those that are landlocked. And I said that because of the devaluation of our currency from 2015, from 1 naira buying 3 francs CFA to 1 naira not even buying one now, 0.8. Yeah. So effectively, from their perspective, our naira is about 80% devalued. So, and then why did I bring the elasticity? I said, if you double the price of the food, Nigerians will not be able to buy our own food.
So it was as
but
if
they
I was
will buy
to you,
our own food because
Prof.
they have higher elasticity of demand. So for them, it's still subsidized. It's still very cheap. So if you raise it by 50%, they'll still buy it.
Because food is cheaper now for them.
No, at all times, it's the currency differential.
Yes.
At all times, they are seeing anything coming from Nigeria as really cheap.
How about
very, very cheap.
Prof, the question also around, and thank you for bringing this in, for the language that I use, I didn't know you talked about this, but I'm just thinking around the resilience. And sometimes we're also caught in, especially economists, especially analysts like you, and a lot of people that predicts economic trends and all of that, not perhaps bringing the human face to many of the things we talk about. And I know why I had to salute us this morning, Nigerians, and saluting our resilience. But how far can the elasticity of the resilience of the Nigerian people be pushed? I don't know if this is this is a socio-economic question.
I hope I understand what you are saying.
Yes, how long can we endure?
60% of our economy is dominated by informal traders. You know, we have 42 million.
Who are also finding it difficult.
Yes, we know we have 42 million MSMEs.
In fact, they are 39 million now.
Okay, they may have gone down to 39 million, but we are that number compared to 90 million MSMEs in Africa. So Nigerians actually are 48% of entrepreneurship in Africa. Compare that to, have to be careful when you are general, because they are the bottom line. You call the base of the pyramid, economic pyramid. And so that is where they absorb all the shock in the economy. That's where part of our resilience comes from.
That's where our resilience comes from. I understand you, but I'm just saying that it's also a bit difficult. But let's move over to another matter. This can be a topic for me next time, in terms of economic resilience and how Nigerians, how far we can endure and what the government needs to do in terms of policy priorities. But let's start from the Central Bank of Nigeria on the 43 items, like I mentioned in my intro. That policy was done in 2015. And I think I must say, because I'm also seeing a lot of people getting it so skewed and not understanding, the Central Bank of Nigeria did not ban the 43 items.
Correct. No,
they didn't ban.
They don't have the power to ban.
They don't have the power to ban. I answered a lot of these questions on social media. So the CBN did not ban those 43 items. What they did was that they limited foreign exchange, that you cannot access dollar to import those items, because that's what it has the power to do. So I hope people understand this. I needed to put that.
Yeah, it's good, because if you come to banning, you have to be talking about Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Trade,
Customs,
because
and
they talk together to decide. Custom is just they just do the work they're asked to do, but the law is made by those two in that respect.
Yes, in that respect. So I hope that this has brought it to end, especially even those that are commenting on the media space around that. I see that not so many people understand. Yes. Even when we are writing, we are saying banned items. It's not banned.
Actually, there's another corollary to that, because why Central Bank actually said was, we were receiving 3.2 billion every month. Now we are getting less than 1 billion. Look, the demand for Forex is 4.6 billion. We don't have it. And if we don't have it, we just don't have it. So they now have to migrate to the cold end of the BDCs and all the black market to find the dollar for that activity. But having said that, though, in support of CBN in that particular decision is that I couldn't cite any bilateral, multilateral, or plurilateral international agreement that actually say that a central bank should provide forex for imports, especially frivolous imports. I can't see where that is. But anyway, that's the discussion.
So let's go back to 2015. Let's go back. Let's replay. From 2015 till now is how many years? I can't even, my maths is actually failing me. Yes, about 8 years. Now let's take a look at what has happened from 2015 till now. At that time, the Central Bank of Nigeria justified that policy. In the statement it released a few days ago, they also justified that policy. But if you take a look at 2015 till now, let's chronicle what has happened. Of course, insecurity, an equation there. Nigeria also was in a recession in 2016 and 2018. That's between 2015 and now. So the insecurity challenges, recession in 2016, 2018. There was COVID-19 in 2020. There was a Naira redesign policy in 2022. There was a Naira swap policy with China within this period. The NNPC non-remittance of forex to the Central Bank of Nigeria due to, according to the NNPC, subdued oil production. We also had policy-induced slowdown from the different shenanigans we were seeing from all our policymakers. So I needed to itemize that. So if you look back now, did that policy fulfill the mandate amid all these variables that I have mentioned?
Yeah, what have happened is, I'm glad you raised all this, because this will answer the question, what has changed from 2015 to now? So apart from all those trajectories that you have mentioned, the insecurity has become more intensified now. It's actually more now, because its impact on agriculture is more pronounced now. And this impact that, you can't even go and invest in any other thing. You're scared to go to any state and invest. People are running away. You can see it in Abuja here. Prices of properties are going up because people are all coming down here. You look at some other parameters that you have mentioned. The infrastructure has got worse, because as at that time, our stock of infrastructure was 35% compared to, South Africa, that's about 80%. So it continued to be worse. And I gave examples of transit goods that are staying 3 to 7 days on the road, just in Abuja Highway, just sitting there and not moving. So some of those have gotten worse. And the struggle, the main plank of the policy was the drop in the production of oil, which dropped by 60%. So that vaporized away the resources that were coming from crude sales to central bank. And then he says, look, forget it. I'm not going to do this. And then apart from saying, I don't want to give you money because I don't have it, it actually now started pouring resources into import substitution. That's why it went to Anko Bureau's program to support rice production so that you don't have the gap. You don't have more gap. It went into even cement. And it started supporting everything that cotton, for example. It went into cotton in a very big way to produce cotton, so that, and even reactivating ginneries and garment manufacturers to be able to substitute. So there were many measures that we are taking. And then so one of the challenges they are going to face now is that when they're all back, what's going to happen to those who have now invested in making sure they produce? Because remember what the past administration was saying is, consume what you produce and produce what you consume. So there are going to be challenges around that front. But frontally, what you have not picked up is what has happened was that, even as early as last year, very early, we had the preponderance of transactions happening in the government windows and less than 10% in the unofficial. But now it's shifted so much that it's not just the 41 items, but also the remittances have all moved. So many transactions have now moved outside the orbit. So it makes sense for the central bank to say, look, get everybody back again, and then at least you can't control what you don't have in your basket. So it's bringing all of them back and then hoping to exercise far more control over that. So that is helpful.
Won't that put additional pressure on the FX market that is already suffering supply issues.
There's no doubt.
Yeah,
There's no doubt
so,
because
yes, that's one question. Then number two is that also looking at the list on some of the items on the list, you're taking a look at rice, the Apex Bank, and unfortunately, so it did that in the last few years because there was no responsible administration. Buhari's administration was not economically responsible, and that was why you saw the Apex Bank trying to do many things. At the time, I said, I just hope they will not start producing baby food because they were going into all of that. But the posture of Cardoso now is that more monetary policy and, inflation targeting and all of that. I'll come back to that if time permits us. But the first question, of course, which I asked you, then the second question is, will this move reduce the parallel market premium?
See, let me tell you.
I hope you understand. There are two questions there.
I know. The elephant in the room is NNPC because the forex that comes into the country, 90% of it comes from them. 79% is from crude sales, 11% from gas, all of them 90%. So the 10% is all these things we are saying is around that 10% that comes in for central bank. And then, of course, that's where remittance is substantial there, and then is moved away from the orbit. The thing, and then when you come to the supply, the demand side, you find that the same NNPC from the 2014, we are demanding over 40% of the proceed for importation. But now it's gone to about 90% because they only give about $300 million to CBN. Otherwise, they used to send about $3 billion every month to CBN. Now it drops about 10%. So it's like, oh, I bring in 90% and I'm taking away 90%. So that's on the face of it.
No, but I'm not defending the NNPC. Sorry, Prof. The NNPC also said at that time, because I know I engaged even the GMD of NNPC, and they were talking, okay, subdued oil production, which I mentioned earlier, as well as the cost of paying for fuel subsidies. Yeah. So at that time, they were justifying that action.
Yeah, but the fact remains that the jury is out on how they can get away with a completely, doing a complete swap, just complete swap of crude for PMS, and then the banks don't get a look in terms of how the currency flows. But that's a different story. But the fact of the matter is this: the two fundamental things. One is you have to have a solid strategy to bring in dollars into the equation, because this is price. Anything about price requires that you look at both demand and supply side. We continue to hammer on demand and demand. We don't do much. We don't talk about how we shore up supply of dollars, because that is what will determine the success of removing these items into here and that. Where are the dollars going to come from, and how energetic are we going? I mean, I can see some money coming in, 1.5 billion is going to come.
That's from the World Bank.
Yeah, but it is dollar. When that dollar arrives, CBN gets hold of that dollar,
and changes.
Keeps some for paying for the services that are denominated in dollars, and then change and give government the naira that they need to do some of the things. But the issue is this: when you get that dollar, what do you do with it? Two things. You now have to decide how much of it goes to show up demand, to stabilize the forex market.
Okay.
You regard that as subsidy, because you expect that market forces will determine. But if you have to inject on a managed float, you are trying to prop up. Okay. The second question is how much of it can go to subsidize production, so that production will ultimately address the substitution, import substitution. So some people will say, remember to put something on the demand production side, because you don't subsidize consumption, you subsidize production. So the argument of removing subsidy is we don't want to subsidize consumption. And then also you're going to subsidize forex, because you're going to put some dollars in forex. So the thing is this: we need to find a balance where we are still encouraging production and not letting the companies melt.
Okay.
We don't want the companies that are currently producing to melt down.
Now, Prof, I hear you very well. And from the $1.5 billion which the Minister of Finance mentioned just a few days ago in Morocco, that's coming from World Bank. I'm trying to I'm trying to reconcile the fact as to how they will be able to balance that act. The $1.5 billion, of course, is for some certain things. Remember,
that's the budget deficit.
It's a budget. I understand
you need that money now, because you are kicking against overdraft from CBN.
CBN, which is
you're also kicking against borrowing that you cannot justify from cost-benefit analysis and all of that.
Now, where I'm going to, Prof.
But you have a gap.
Now, where I'm
You've
going
showed me a figure here.
Yes.
100 and something percent of the actual debt service.
Yes, that's
a lot more than
revenue.
We need money. So budget support comes in handy. We also need to provide you some dollars to be able to not allow any debt issue on a service issue.
Now, what I'm trying to get from your statement is, did I get you right when you mentioned earlier, perhaps some monies from the $1.5 billion will also be given to the central bank in terms of helping them manage Forex? Did I get that right?
No,
because
see, let's say, for example,
you know, there's a backlog already of
there's a
$8 billion. So this is not even, it's a small fry.
Some of them.
We also have about $20 billion even in forwards agreements that needs to be met. So this one is nothing.
It's absolutely
nothing there. That's actually what I wanted.
But it is something when you look at the fact that current level of debt service is higher than the revenue. So you need to have it in. You need to really have something in right now. And we're all saying no to central bank overdraft. And then we're also saying no to any reckless borrowing that could not be justified on cost-benefit analysis and all kinds of stuff. So we still have to run the government.
And which the finance minister said that there's no, I'm actually surprised. And when I see him, I will ask him that question. Because some weeks ago, he said, oh, there's a cap on borrowing, we won't borrow. Then he went to Morocco. He had a handshake with them, World Bank and IMF, and he came back and told us $1.5 billion. But they are
it's a different kind of handshake because this is budget support.
Yeah,
and it's concessionary, which means it's literally near to zero interest rate.
But
if
we're
you
going
go
to
pay for it, of course you go to pay for it.
It's going to
but
add
it's so soft.
to...
It's so soft.
There are no easy way out, isn't it?
No, let me tell you, it's better than ways and means.
Ways and means from
because
the
ways
central
and
bank.
means would normally be 20% if you are paying it because the law
but
says.
now it's 9%. They securitized it.
Yeah, if you securitize it, then you can go for 9%. But 9% is much higher than what you would pay on World Bank. Despite that, you're also getting dollars from them.
No, it's a whole lot really trying to balance the act of.
Yeah, but I learned to tell you this. This economy is an import-dependent economy. And it is not by our design, it's originally by the design of International Division of Labor that says Nigeria and Africa produce for the West so that they can process them and bring it here. So all other things that were happening all along were to maintain that status quo. So having an import economy and dependent economy and doing very little about it will continue to haunt and hurt the country. Okay. It will, because what happens is that it places you on a transmission belt of global supply chain. Any headwinds, anything, whether it's COVID-19 or whether it is crude prices or whether it is American mortgage crisis, anything, or Russian will affect Nigerian import and then transmit that to the common man. So we have to constantly have that at the back of our mind. You have to go for, and Nigeria's two strategies on this has been progressive value addition aimed or linked to import substitution. And second one is export-led growth, which leads to poverty reduction and create employment. So those are the two Nigerian government have been using all along to fight this.
Okay. Now, let's talk a bit more about the central bank before we move to other issues. My question is also around how the Apex Bank can manage the adjustment process this time to reduce volatility and uncertainty. I wonder what will be going through Cardoso's mind and his deputy governors. Of course, this is a new terrain for him, and the central bank, they've lifted the restrictions of Apex on this for 3 items. How will they manage this? Because it's an adjustment process. And Prof, to add, I was looking at the FX rates this morning, what it closed for yesterday.
848.
That's a sharp depreciation for yesterday. So the other question is, are we
budget benchmark of
700? Now, are we already seeing?
And then wait a minute.
Yeah.
Projected, the forward rate for 2024 January, I think January, February is
1,000 and something. Yes, I was even chatting with someone, one of the presidential aides
what that
this
shows
morning.
you is the level. I think is something that is missing in discussions. You see, speculation has done more damage to the economy than the actual forex being required. Let me explain, please.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
Prof.
see, let me say, we know that $4.6 billion every month is being requested for import. But what we don't know is how much is on account of speculation. People who can't do any business again, only to buy dollar and sell dollar and buy dollar. That is a huge chunk. People are just speculating on the currency, dollarizing the economy, buying and selling dollars as a business, not necessarily
That's
for
the big
import.
men. Now the big men, they do.
So that is the most dangerous one. And then you could see that when the president was sworn in and he had made his announcement on 2 items, speculators held back because they felt that maybe there's going to be more supply of dollar. And then the capital market responded favorably. And then I said, I don't know if you remember some of the television interviews I granted. I said, yeah, these are welcome news, but if they wait for a month or so and they don't see that influx of dollar, it will still go down. That is the devaluation will continue. There will be a temporary convergence of the two rates because of the expectation that something was going to come. And if it's not coming, one is that both of them are still heading down in the down direction, but then they will begin to diverge.
So
that's
what we're seeing.
today.
Because I was actually not so surprised because I tried to analyze also the sharp depreciation that we saw yesterday. And I'm like, okay, are we the Nigerian foreign exchange market, which we've been told to call, not the IKE window, according to the last CBN's acting governor. I don't know if Cardoso will still remain with that or it will still be IKE window. So I'm looking at 848 in the official market, looking at 1,000 and something in the parallel market. That's still a very high premium. Now the question is, what kind of FX management framework is open? As I'm even asking the question, I'm feeling such heartache because it's such a big...
The quantum is quite large.
I don't know how these people will be sleeping in Cardoso and Co. I don't know. Because it's such a big issue. And these are really self-inflicted. These are self-inflicted to an extent. Apart from what global economic trends pushed on us, there were a lot of policies mismatch. So, but what do you expect from the central bank in terms of the kind of FX management framework?
See, it will be, I could never ever say that central bank alone can
do this,
get all this done. No, it's unfair. It's unfair to expect central bank alone to do this. So, because central bank doesn't print dollars. I keep saying it. It just works with what it comes in and tries to incentivize. Now, when the statement was made on the return of the 41 items, what I expected was that the finance minister and the trade minister would be anchoring, would be, like nodding, giving that nod. You do need fiscal policy to support that monetary policy, and then also trade policy to support it. If these two don't come in handy, then we're going to have to wait for quite some time. There will be temporary gain, but we're going to have to wait for quite some time. And I gave certain examples. In 2015, I was up in arms, and I was saying, why is it that central bank is the only man standing? Where are the fiscal authorities? Why don't you do something? You have to send a clear message to these importers who are importing these goods that, you have to pay more if you have to continue. And then you have to protect the industry that have taken that, that have made that investment, with faith in the Nigerian the policy. So you can't ignore them. So one thing I needed to have more intervention from the trade and finance. Because if you look at the ECOWAS treaty, we have common external tariff, which we all signed just before the European Partnership Agreement, which we refused to sign, and very good reason for not doing that. Now that policy has banned 0, they have 5, 10, 20, and 35. We're not going to change those bans because we are already bound by it. But we have levy instrument that allows us, if we have concerns, like we have concerns on this 41 items, there may be 10 of them, or even the rice, cement, the one that are so critical, you have to bring levy in there. And I know I pressed it for many, many years, and the last minister did it, 5%. I said, go to 20%. Increase that so that you can give more protection
to your local
those who are investing their money, and they are working in extremely hard conditions. The roads are not there. The cost of the energy has gone up. They plant the thing. There is security against the planting. Even where I'm cultivating now, over 500 hectares, the animals are messing up the whole thing.
Oh, including
everywhere,
you,
I'm
Prof.
telling you.
Even mine last week.
And I'm building
animals
industrial
just
park.
Entered by farm.
Industrial park. They're coming and kidnapping a mile before every time 3 kidnaps in one week. And then I have 900 bags of cement coming down. He's been sleeping in Nsukka for 2 weeks. So people are producing under this condition. So, you have to protect them. Otherwise, there's going to be a complete meltdown of manufacturing industries.
Okay. Now, that brings me to the issue of social safety nets, which we saw yesterday. The CCT was launched as a conditional cash transfer, CCT for short. And the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation mentioned that that's for 15 million households, 25,000 naira each, 75,000 naira for 3 months for about 61 million individuals. Is this really based on a strong social protection program that will reduce poverty alleviation? And why I'm asking this, not just for the camera or for these 3 months, how can this federal government really link it that this program, there's a nexus between this, which is temporal, to alleviating poverty, which Nigeria is a poverty capital in the world, even vis-a-vis some other programs of this nature in other climes?
Well, you use the word alleviating poverty. Yes, it does alleviate poverty because every little counts, but not sustainable poverty reduction. Now, sustainability doesn't come in there, and it's for 3 months anyway. Palliatives don't have a record of increasing economic growth per se, but they're just like if you have headache, you can drink. Is it not
paracetamol?
Paracetamol, but that doesn't cure what is causing the headache.
That's the root.
Yes. So you give that because you are human. You see people dropping on the street. If they don't have food, they can't pay. Someone don't have shelter, they can't pay rent. You drop that money. So that money is just, just as you called it, a palliative for and it has a temporary transient thing. But it's not a sustainable plan. But even then, though, it's even bigger than the 10,000 that was given in the last decision. That is 10,000 for
trader money.
Trader money and
market
so it's even trader money. But you'll have to persuade them to make that investment. But it has its merit, but it is not a growth path for the country.
I'm just trying to do a quick maths, Prof, sorry. Then the quick math I'm trying to do is 75,000 naira per household in 3 months times 60 million people, and what I'm getting here is 4.5. Is that 4.5 billion or what? Okay, that's what I'm actually getting here. 4.5 trillion naira, I think, and I think they really need to clear this, because if you're going to be giving 75,000 naira for 3 months for 60 million individuals, or perhaps let me even do 15 million. Let's do 15 million so that that's for 15 million households. Let me see what it will come out to very quickly. Sorry, Prof.
No, it's all right.
Okay, that's 1.12 trillion naira. So this makes sense now for household, because I was taking a look at how the government would even budget gets the monies for this. Now that takes me to the next question. How can the government also communicate to us that are Nigerians and indeed show us that the freed up resources that will be gotten from petrol subsidy removal, we used to spend like 3-4 trillion naira in a year, or even 6 trillion naira in a year for petrol subsidy. So the petrol subsidy savings now going to priority areas of investment. How can government really go about this?
But you're already seeing that the budget for states have gone up.
Okay,
it's over 1 trillion now. That that is being shared out to government. It used to be 700, 650, so it's gone up. So that's at least a breather for the state governments. And secondly, bear in mind that even though this money is called palliatives, it improves aggregate demand.
That's actually what I was saying in terms of consumption.
Demand for consumption.
Yes.
So that means that some of the producers, it will breathe life into them and they can improve. Secondly, some of the people who are wise could use some of that money for petit trade and all the things that trader money would have done for them. Yeah. So some would make that investment Some may just sit around and eat and
Won't
spend
it cause inflation?
No, I mean, what do you do that doesn't cause inflation?
Inflation.
If you're taking 22.7 trillion as what they call it, overdraft, is it not going to cause inflation? So, but that's not.
It's not a delicate balance, really.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that it still trickles down to affect output. So, if it is properly directed, it could actually increase output in the same way as it increased aggregate demand. So, in that case, it could be neither here nor there.
Okay. 3 questions before we go, because my director said we've got to go, but I'm seeing here we have just like a minute or two. Now, inflation, what will really reduce Nigeria's inflation? I hear you earlier when you talked about it has to be a mix of trade, fiscal, as well as monetary. And we've said that a lot of times. That's one. Then number 2, the MPC meeting has not been held yet for September. Cardoso, I know, is new there now. Perhaps we'll get to see some other MPC meetings. They've been tightening. In fact, the central bank has tightened by around 725 basis points from May 2022 till the last meeting in July, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you see for there? Then number 3, this posture of the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor. What do you think in terms of, I'm not going for development finance. I think we've done a lot of that. Let's really go for the job, which primarily is for the central bank. Prof.
Well, don't forget that some of development finance are not for just 1 year. Some of them are for 3 years, some are for 5 years. So they are going to still be there in the next few years. But what may happen is that there may not be more new injections. And secondly, also, people also need to understand that some of this money that we are mentioning are actually banks' money. Some of these monies are actually banks' money. Exactly. It's not like central bank brings money from nowhere and shares it out to people. Yeah. No, it's banks' money. And some of them are actually cash reserve ratio that they are now being asked to come and lend out and on certain conditions. So, you know, I get offended when people think that central bank is borrowing money to give out to people. It doesn't work like that. Then, of course, for inflation, we have to tackle the big elephant in the inflation equation, and that is food supply sub-index, and that has been cruising at 3%, 3 to 5% gap for a long time, for many years. So we have to tackle that. But to tackle that means that you have to recognize the impact of those people surrounding the country, those francophones that are constantly. We have to understand that. Okay. And then obviously, more mechanization will help. Insecurity is the big thing driving people away from the farms. Okay. So it's a work in progress.
Prof, I think we'll leave it at that. I know that we can stay here and continue to analyze, because it seems it's getting deeper and have more layers. But thank you very much
for
joining me today. I've been speaking with Professor Ken Ife, who is a development economist, and we've been looking at Nigeria's economic conundrum. See you all again tomorrow. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and build a change that you want to see.